Today on Capechi's Corner, we're going to look at rational exponents. So when we have an exponent, we have something like 27 to the 1/3. The 3, the denominator there, is going to be our index. And then the first power, our numerator, is going to be our power for our radicand. So when you simplify 3 to the 27ths, we get 3. Right, same thing for this example here. Again, the 1/2 power is a basic square root, and then we'll go for the simplification there. All right, so we're going to look at a variety of topics with this, building from this. So let's look at number 1. It says write the expression in radical form. So again, this is the basic. This is the one I always like to go back to. If you're stuck or in a quiz, you're getting nervous, or homework, you're getting the things confused, we know that our denominator is going to be our index. And then our numerator is going to be our power, which makes sense to us, right? Because we know that the square root of x, you've talked about this when you're learning powers to begin with. So the square root of x is equal to x to the 1/2. Same thing with number 2. This denominator is going to be my index. And then I'm going to have x underneath. It's going to be to the first power, but I don't necessarily need that first power there. Number 3, my 4 is going to be my index, my denominator, and then b to the 3rd. Okay, now we're going to get things besides just as 1 as our numerator, and we're going to mix things up. So we're going to have some other examples here. So let's take a look at number 4. Okay, we're going to go this time, we're going to go the other way. We're going to take an expression that is in radical form, and we're going to write it in exponential form. So I know my b is to the first, so it's going to be b to the 1/4. Same thing with m. This is going to give me m to the second is my numerator, my index is my denominator. And we are going to have some negative exponents. So this becomes c to the -4/5. And we'll deal with more of what we're going to do with that later to simplify. Okay, in the past, you've done, especially in Algebra 1, you've done a lot with square roots. Now we're going to work with third roots and fourth roots and fifth roots. And that little table there, I think, sometimes helped you. So you can use that on a test if your teacher allows, or it's not a bad idea just to kind of make one when the tests start to help you depending on what the problems are. Okay. Our next set of problems says to evaluate. Now, when we see the word evaluate in math, it means give me a value. Okay. So in the way that we've been working with this one, my 3 would be my index, and I have 216 squared. 216 squared is going to give me a really big number. It may or may not be able to take the third root. It's hard to say, but another way you can do it, you can use your calculator. Another way we can do this is, well, I know 216, right? If I look back up my table, I know 216 is 6 to the 3rd power. So I replace 216 with that, and I'm going to raise that to the 2/3 power. Now, a power to a power, we multiply. So this becomes 6. Remember, this is over 1, and I multiply, I get 6/3, which is 6 squared, which also gives me 36. So again, that's just kind of an introduction of the way of how we're going to use a lot of these powers and the different roots. All right, let's look at number 8. Now, my exponent is negative. So now I'm going to take that to the other side of the dividing line. I have -3,125. Now, I'm going to take that to the 5th power underneath. And again, if you look at my table, my 5th power, that's going to give me 5 underneath, right? So the 5th power of -3,125 is going to give me -1/5. Okay, let's look at the next one, 256. We are going to play around with 256 a little bit. So I know that 256 is 4 to the 4th power. Is 4 to the 4th power. So I'm going to write 4 to the 4th power. And I'm going to raise that to the 3/8 power. Now again, power to power multiply. So I end up with 4 to the 12 over 8. And that 12 to the 8 simplifies. So it's 4. I can simplify that fraction to 3/2. Okay, let's see if we can do anything else with it. So my 2 is my index, right? So it's going to be a square. 4 to the 3rd underneath. 4 to the 3rd is 64. So in this case, 64, the square root of 64 gives me 8. Okay, now we're going from evaluating and we're going to start simplifying again. Just a variety of problems to expose this to you. It's not a bad idea to go back and watch the video again as you're working through problems through your homework or getting ready for a test. Okay, number 10, my bases are the same. Now remember, if you had something like x squared times x to the third, if my bases were the same, I would add them and get x to the fifth, right? So we're going to have the same idea here. My bases are the same. I'm going to get a, and I'm going to add 2 to the seventh, and 4 to the seventh gives me 6 to the seventh. Now I can't do anything else with that, so that's going to be my final answer. Okay, look at number 11, same idea. I have y, 3 plus 2 gives me 5. My denominator is going to stay the same, so that gives me y to the first, or y. Okay, so now we're going to start working with negative exponents. So I'm going to move that to the other side of the dividing line, and my power becomes positive. Now, I cannot have a fraction as a power in my denominator, so I need to get rid of that, okay? If I could have 6 over 6, that would be b to the first, which is allowed, right? So if I just need a b to the 1/6, whenever I do the bottom, I do the top, and that gives me b to the 1/6 on the top. Now, 5/6 plus 1/6 gives me 6 over 6, right? So I have b to the 6 over 6. Well, what my final answer is, that is b to the 1/6 over b to the first, and that's my final answer right there. All right, the next one also has a negative exponent, so I'm going to get 1 over x to the 3/5. And I need 2 more fifths, right? So I'm going to take x to the 2/5 on the top and x to the 2/5 on the bottom. So I get x to the 2/5 on the top, and that is going to be x to the first on the bottom. So that's my final answer right there. All right, we're going to keep moving. Number 14 is a power to a power. So remember when we had something like this, x to the second raised to the third, we would multiply that, and that would give me x to the 6. Okay, so we're going to do the same idea. X, 5, this is 5 over 1, so this gives me 10 over 3. I can't simplify that fraction at all, so that's going to give me my final answer right there. Now our next problem has a negative exponent, so we're going to bring that to the other side of the dividing line right away. 1 to the 6. Now this 2/16, I realize that that's really 6 to the third power. So I'm going to take 1 over, this is 6 raised to the third power. And then I can raise that to the 1/6 power. So what happens there, again, when I multiply a power to a power, I'm going to get 6 to the 3/6 power, which is the same as 1/2, right? So it's going to get 1 over 6 to the 1/2 power, which we're used to seeing like this. Square root of 6 is 6 to the 1/2 power. Okay, multiply top and bottom by root 6. And my final answer is going to be root 6 over 6. Okay, let's take a look at the next power. We have a variable there. So we're going to kind of clean it up a little bit to start with because of that 64. Now I know that 64 is 4 to the third power. And then I have z to the 6th power. So I know, first of all, looking at that 4, this would give me 4, and then I have 3 over 3, which is 4 to the first, right? So it's just 4. And then I have z to the 6 divided by 3, right? This is really this. So that gives me 4z to the second power, and that's my final answer right there. All right, let's take on the next one. Let's see what we have. Now, again, remembering that 64 and 4, both the radicand and the numerator and denominator are both bases of 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of make that 64th to the 1/5 and 4 to the 1/5. And I'm going to take into account now, I'm going to take into account the base of 2. So this is 2 to the 6th power, that's 64 raised to the 1/5. And then 2 to the second, which is 4, also raised to the 1/5. Remember, a power by a power, we're going to multiply. So that gives me 2 to the 6 over 5 power, and then 2 to the 2 over 5 power. Now, my bases are the same, right? So now remember, if you had something like this before, when the bases are the same, you just subtract. So we're going to do the same thing there. So this just gives me a final answer of 2 to the 4/5. Okay, number 18. I have this time I have binomials on top and bottom. So I'm going to multiply by the conjugate. So on the bottom I have 3 x to the 1/2 minus 2 Same thing is going to happen on the top. And I'm going to use FOIL on the top, right? Because I have binomial times a binomial. So that gives me 3. This coefficient is 1, so I get 3. X to the 1/2 times x to the 1/2 gives me x to the first. On my outside, I'm going to get negative 2 x to the 1/2. The inside, I'm going to get negative 6 x to the 1/2. And then my outside, I'm going to get plus 4. Now my denominator, I'm at 3 times 3, which gives me 9. X to the 1/2 times x to the 1/2 gives me x to the first. I know my outside and my inside terms are going to zero out. That's the whole point, right, to do that. Multiply it by the conjugate to get rid of my fractions there and my exponents. And then I have minus 4. Okay, so let me just clean up the top. So I have 3x. Now this is really negative 2x, 2 square root of x, and I get negative 6 square root of x, right? We're a little bit more comfortable seeing it that way. So the last thing I have to do is combine these two. So my final answer here is going to be 3x minus 8 root x plus 4 all over 9x minus 4. Okay, last one for today. Same thing. We're going to multiply by the conjugate. So I have y to the 1/2 plus 2, and I have y to the 1/2 plus 2 on the top. So when I use FOIL again, y to the 1/2 times y to the 1/2 gives me 1. My outside is going to give me 2, and I'm going to just rewrite at that point. I realized 2 to y to the 1/2 is square root of x. I'm a little bit more comfortable doing that. Oh, sorry, I have y. I don't know why I wrote x there. Let's do y out of habit, I guess. Same thing with the inside. And my last is going to be 4. And then on the bottom, y to the 1/2 times y to the 1/2 gives me y. And then my outside term is negative 4. So I just have to combine. I have y plus 4 root y plus 4 all over y minus 4. And that's your final answer. Great job today with these rational exponents. I know it's a lot, so take your time, go back if you need to, but thanks again for stopping by. Have a good day.